what do you love about Chicago?
I'm the child of parents born in Chicago who were children of immigrants and love the neighborhoods, love the vibrancy, love the connections in the city, that it's such a great place to live, to work together. Can't imagine living anywhere else.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Notes from Chicago. Chicago is really a food town, and when people talk about Chicago, they talk about iconic types of food. They talk about pizza, they talk about Chicago beef. They also talk about Eli's Cheesecake. And today we are very privileged to have the president of Eli's Cheesecake with us, Marc Schulman. Marc, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, so happy to be with you today.
I was so excited when you agreed to do this and ended up obviously learning a ton about Eli's, both in terms of researching for this episode, but then also getting to come on site. My producer and I came on site, did a full factory tour, which was incredible. What I didn't know, one of the things I learned was that, in my mind, Eli's Cheesecake has always been the brand, but it didn't start as a standalone brand. So tell me a little bit about how Eli's Cheesecake got started.
Well, we're very fortunate. There was Eli, my father, born in Chicago in 1910, who went into the restaurant business in 1940 when there was a foreclosure notice on the door of his coffee shop he went to on the west side at Ogden and Kedzie. And that started for him this 50-year career in the restaurant business and becoming well known as a great restaurateur, a host. So his journey as a restaurateur went from the west side, Ogden and Kedzie, to the north side, Argyle and Sheridan and Edgewater, then to Oak Street. Eli's Stage Delicatessen, which in the 60s had, visitors like Barbara Streisand, Woody Allen, Henny Youngman, a lot of the stars of the day who were at Mr. Kelly's on Rush Street. And then in 1966, he opened Eli's, a place for steak. So his dream at that time was to have a white tablecloth restaurant. Eli's became quite the gathering place for media, celebrities, politicians. And it was there he started playing around in the kitchen and developing a dessert that he wanted to serve to his guests at the restaurant. So that came about in the late 70s. And then Taste of Chicago came along in 1980. And that's where Eli brought his cheesecake to Michigan Avenue for the first Taste of Chicago. So that was the first time it was sold outside the restaurant. And then that started, now we're looking at it 46 years later, the growth of the cheesecake business. Regrettably, my father passed away in 1988. Was involved in our restaurant with my mother until it closed in 2005. But certainly I've spent the years building the company, expanding the product line, expanding our customer base, always with this commitment to our people, to our quality, to the customers. And we've been very fortunate. And, we look back when you have such a long history and rich history that, we get to build upon it every day, but our values are very focused on quality customers and our people.
Did you expect to be working in the business originally?
No, I'm an only child. And when I was growing up, education my education was very important to my parents. Went to college, went to law school. Um, I think my parents either probably wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer. So the closest I came to being a doctor is I do wear a white coat. But, became a lawyer, practiced law for 5 years. So I had the opportunity representing other family businesses like our own.
Mm-hmm.
And then, really joining full time in 1984, really working very diligently. Our first facility was on Deacon Street. It's a half a mile south of where we are now. Started in 10,000 feet, expanded it, and brought the building to 20,000 feet. Then started in 1988 working on a plan to stay in the neighborhood and come to where we are now, which was formerly the site of the Reed Dunning Mental Health Center, opening in 96 with the Mayor Daley, Governor Thompson, and President Strozier, and then continuing to grow the business. And then 3 years ago, expanding once again to give us a little more breathing room in the facility. But no, it's been great. And the fact, that many of our people, knew my dad, have worked in the business for many years, really have a commitment to our history, and, committing to doing a great job.
And talking about the people, I think that was one thing that after visiting Eli's, that both my producer Tanisha and I talked about a lot, was how many people that we met kind of during that time that had been there for a long time. Just observationally, like that's pretty telling. How like, and you just talked a few minutes ago about how important, how like one of the values for the company is people. Talk a little bit more about that. We even talked to someone who started maybe as a dishwasher at one of the restaurants, and now has a huge role in running like the whole facility out there. So
Yeah, well, I think you met Elias Casongo, who's our
yeah.
vice president of operations and purchasing, who came to Eli's 31 years ago as a refugee from the Congo, started in the dish room, worked in every part of the business, got his English as a second language certificate from Truman College, went to Triton to get his associates, and then ultimately went to Northeastern to get his, bachelor's degree in business. Came up 20 years ago to work in purchasing, and then worked his way up. So he's, the senior operations person. So, individuals who've been here 30 years, 35 years, we're really fortunate. It really comes from my father and his views in the restaurant business. Treat the other as though you're the other was always a basic value. If you're in the restaurant business, the most important person is the dishwasher, the busboy, that person who really, makes it happen. So in our business, and we're so happy you were able to visit, it's the flexibility of the people, their commitment, their experience. So, I don't know if there's another way to do it. We look at companies that, hire a lot of temporary workers and, people don't stay. But, why are we successful? Because we have great people. And so that's really a core principle of what we do. And that's what our customers appreciate, the consumers, that we take quality in the products we make. They're premium products, they're expensive. they have to be good. It's not like you just turn on a big machine and then they come out, an hour later, somewhere
Yeah.
at the end of the bakery. No, there's a lot of handwork and commitment. So again, people were very fortunate. And again, that is directly out of Eli's belief and our roots in the restaurant business.
Well, I think that speaking of the handwork, that was the other thing that Tanisha and I remarked upon to each other is how much handwork was going on. So it's not just machines, and that there's quite a bit of and much more than I expected. Of course, that was my first time stepping into an operation like that, but much more than I expected of sort of care um, into that. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure, we make a number of different things in a day. If it's types of cheesecake, cakes, pies, tarts, and in the course of a day, an associate might do three, four different things. It could be the point in the process. It could be, how things evolve. Now, there are bakeries or food plants that have these, huge machines, and you're going to press the button at one end and it comes out. Well, our business, we're not afraid of taking on uh, projects where, to us it's a lot, but it's not like, it's like we make one thing. There are companies that say, I'll give you the same, a million of them, but it just has to be exactly the same. And again,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that we have the wide range of product, our people are key to having the flexibility to move around the bakery to be able to do multiple tasks within a day or a week. And the benefit to that is, let's say we're making something seasonally or for a launch, and we're making a lot of them. Well, one day you're not making it. So what are you doing the next day? And so, we'll watch people, flawlessly move from one project to another. So again, that's a key um, reason, for both our strategy and we hope our continued success.
You mentioned earlier that the cheesecake was first sold outside the restaurant at the very first Taste of Chicago. Were you there
But
at that taste?
yes, yes. I mean, I think, July 4th, 1980, in front of Tribune Tower, this was an idea that Arnie Morton had brought from New York. There was a press preview with Mayor Byrne at City Hall. So it was Eli, Arnie Morton, Don Roth, and Rich Melman, the famed restaurateur. And yes, we were certainly there. My wife and I, Eli was there in a coat and tie, which really made it challenging because, those were days when we didn't have cutters to cut cheesecake. So, there's lines. You didn't know what to expect going to this first taste. And
Mm-hmm.
they're huge lines, and you're literally, cutting the cheesecakes right there. So it was a great start. We are the only vendor that's been in Taste of Chicago every year. So we
Wow.
celebrate our birthday at the Taste. Actually, Taste of Chicago the last 3 years was in September because of NASCAR. Since NASCAR is not coming back, we're very happy that Taste of Chicago will be during the summer in July, so we could celebrate our birthday, closer to the actual time. But it's pretty exciting when you come back and you think, wow, yeah, 46 years we've been at this event. We've, built the business, think of my dad, certainly at the first taste. We always remember Taste of Chicago in 1987. It was Chicago's 150th birthday. And we were doing one of our first big cakes. Mayor Washington was supposed to come to celebrate, but there was a chance of rain. So my wife Maureen, who's our publicist and partner, had an idea that Bozo was there. We had all these celebrities from Chicago media people, and Bozo was there, and Bozo read the city's proclamation that Eli's Cheesecake was Chicago's official 150th birthday cake. But, my parents were there, my aunt. It was, we actually have the video of Eli, on the stage. So, I think, we have such great history. And yes, that I can say I've, been there. I met, my wife Maureen at Eli's Place for Steak. I think trick-or-treating on Oak Street when I was 11 at the deli. So it's quite a history. And as, we share in the cookbook that Maureen and Alana and Diana, our coworkers, wrote. We celebrate our food, we celebrate our people, we celebrate our recipes, but we celebrate all these events, the big cakes, the mayoral bets. I mean, there's a lot that goes on and continues to go on. And I think that's why, as a brand and as a company, we've continued to succeed, because a lot of times, a brand's history or a company's history is at a point in time, and then, they're not doing those events, or, the company gets sold. And those parts of our business are really critical. So if it's, going to Washington for both of President Clinton and President Obama's inaugurals, doing all of these big cakes for major events, it's a part of our DNA. It's a key part of who we are.
That's very cool that you got to go to the White House. But I think hearing about Bozo the Clown as a child of the 80s was very exciting to me, because I loved watching the Bozo show. Kind of playing on that, I am curious then, you're talking about this history and all the history that Eli's has had in Chicago. As you were growing, and as you've grown over, the past, like since you've been president there, you've been leading the company for 40 years essentially. How important was it to you to stay in Chicago, or to stay, to be able to continue to stay here?
Well, I think we've been very fortunate. I think we're in a time of the year where people get excited about the Bears and football, and it was in 1986 when the Bears played in the Super Bowl. And Mayor Washington was having a party in New Orleans, and he said, on national TV, and I brought Chicago pizza, and I brought Chicago ribs, and I brought Eli's Cheesecake. So, hey, it's our home, the heritage, our people are from here. All the mayors, from Mayor Byrne, Mayor Washington, Sawyer, who took Eli's Cheesecake to Sweden when the Bears played there. Mayor Daley was a tremendous supporter of ours and really critical to building this facility. Mayor Emanuel, who when he was congressman and head of the DCCC sent Eli's Cheesecake to all his like top prospects. Um, Mayor Lightfoot, and now Mayor Johnson. So I think we're as Chicago as it comes. And again, we have this. My dad born in 1910, just west of the Maxwell Street Market, the UIC campus. Yeah, this is here, and we take a lot of pride, and we've gotten great support over the years from the city and from the state of Illinois. When we opened this expansion, it was Governor Pritzker who did it. When we opened the facility, it was Governor Edgar and Mayor Daley. Governor Thompson was a very close friend, so we're very happy to be here, and we look forward to continuing to grow in Chicago and in Illinois.
Awesome. That's great to hear. I think particularly, it's just great to have long running, iconic, family run businesses in the city that are committed to staying in the city. It's
Yeah.
awesome. How has the cheesecake changed over the years?
Well,
Or has it?
I think if there's changes, it's for the better. We're always watching comments, to somebody say, oh, it's not as good or what happened. I mean, we really don't screw around with success. And if anything, we upgrade because since we're at a scale where we could specify ingredients, if it's, the sour cream we use, the cream cheese, the Nielsen Massey, bourbon vanilla, which is like liquid gold, the cookie bakers who work through the night baking the cookie crust under the cheesecake. So, I think we always feel if Eli, decided to come back one day and visit us, that he'd say, hey, you know what, it's good. I mean, I don't know. He'd say it's great. My dad was always a tough judge, but he'd say, yeah, you know what, you're doing the right thing, and you'll see sometimes, someone's advertising, real vanilla or real cream cheese. Well, we've been doing, look, we're not the cheapest cheesecake. That's not what we do, but people come to us because we make artisanal desserts, because our associates are craftsmen, very dedicated to what they do. So, somebody says, well, it's expensive. Okay, I mean, we think it's fairly priced, but, we're giving you something great. And it's, with inflation, nothing's inexpensive. And I went in a drugstore the other day, and I decided I want to roll a Nico's, the candies, which are traditional, and it was $2.25, and I'm going, and I bought it, and going, I remember that was 50 cents, and so, so if a slice of Eli's cheesecake is $2.99 or $3.99, it's like, it's fair. So, we we listen to our customers, the wide range of what started with 4 flavors of cheesecake and now is just so many more things we can do. And as again, our customers come to us, one example is Culver's, which we're branded on the menu, and it's our cheesecake cubes, these 1-inch cubes, and also a chocolate cake cube. And they came to us, Alana, our daughter, had, when she worked in New York at Vice, her team had to write about favorite fast food dessert. Was the concrete. We wrote a note to Craig Culver. He wrote back and said, hey, you should be making our desserts. And 6 months later, we were, but we never made those tiny cubes before. So continuing to innovate, continuing, to serve our customers. And again, our customers, if it's a retailer or a restaurant chain or independent restaurant, they want quality. And consumers saying, hey, I want a treat, and I think, you have economic issues, you have, people dieting more or, all the GLPs, but if it's a premium dessert that's worth it, and maybe it's special occasion, but hey, if I'm going to have a treat, I'm going to have Eli's.
Love that. Do you have a favorite flavor of cheesecake?
Yeah. It continues to be chocolate chip, which was Eli's second flavor, bittersweet chocolate. It served very cold. We also do a version of it for Taste of Chicago. It's a cheesecake on a stick frozen, which is always good. And, there's so much. And as you saw in the cafe, then we make all these specialty baked goods for here. So a lot of other special flavors of cheesecake, plus cookies and pie in the sky heated up. So I think, again, as the businesses evolve, there are all these sort of fun sub products that either we just make for ourselves here, maybe we sell it on our direct to consumer site, or it's in wholesale distribution. During COVID, or coming out of COVID, United Airlines came to us and said, we want a cookie to be able to heat in flight, and serve packaged, and that'll be our first class dessert. And so Alana worked on that with Diana, our head of innovation, and then came up with Pie in the Sky, which was very successful on United, and sometimes you'll get it today. And that product now is really popular on our direct-to-consumer site as well, where people take advantage of that. Or right now, we've been doing a cheesecake brownie in flight for United Airlines. We also sell that on our direct-to-consumer site.
So it's cheesecake and more.
Absolutely.
I mentioned this at the top, but Chicago is really known for iconic foods and iconic food brands. You have such a long history of working in the food industry in Chicago. I'm curious if you have an opinion on what makes Chicago such a mecca for great food companies and brands and restaurants as well.
Great question. Obviously growing up in the industry and watching great restaurateurs, independents, things that have evolved here. But, Chicago is historically such an amazing food town, going back to the stockyards and our friend Bobby Hadoff, who owned Allen Brother Meats. So it was a place, because of the location, everything sort of came through Chicago. And so clearly you had the history, where we are on the northwest side of Chicago. Mars now is, shut it down, but there was I think first big candy plant was about 2 miles from here. Tootsie Roll still made in Chicago. You have other, food companies that evolved here. I think what's really exciting about food in Chicago is look at all the stages. Look at, Green City Market, look at home bakers, look at shared kitchens. And then you go on the scale to smaller independents. You go to our size company, where we're fortunate to have more resources. And then when you think in our sort of group, Home Run Inn, then, sort of my dear friend, the late Joe Perino, um, Ganella, Toronto, Vienna,
Mhm.
multi-generation family businesses that really continue that focus, but still call Chicago home. And then you even go further and, you have, these super giant food companies, ingredient companies. I'm really fortunate because for over 35 years, I've been involved with the Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences, which is a public high school located in the Mount Greenwood neighborhood on the last working farm in the city. And it's a school that's been developing leaders in food and agriculture for all those years. So we, out of that, work with the University of Illinois,
Yeah.
other universities, and you look at these great young people who pursue careers in food. Because one of the things that's really important is, can we keep people, if they go away to college, can they come back? And what are all these careers in the food industry? Food science, food safety, operations, maintenance, finance, sales, marketing. So, to operate a business like ours, it, it takes a lot of talent in areas you need a lot of expertise to be able to do it. So we it's very important to us to tell the story of food and why we're happy to be here. It's good for other companies to locate here, and to have the talent to make it possible. On talent, we've been very fortunate because, historically, we've had a lot of success hiring refugees as Elias
Mhm.
was over the years, new Americans as immigrants. We also have a history of hiring people with disabilities. We have a program with the state of Illinois called Project Right Access, which is students with cognitive disabilities at Vaughan High School and the Chicago High School for Ag Sciences to help them develop careers in food. And that's a state funded program through DCEO. It's been very successful, and those individuals with disabilities have always been a very important part contributor to our business.
That's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing to hear. When you think about the future of Eli's, I mean, this incredible history, what's next?
Well, we're fortunate that for 7 years we've been a third generation business. Our youngest daughter, Alana, has been here full time and has assumed a lot of leadership responsibilities. And so, as I had a vision when I worked with my father, certainly she has a vision that we usually share. But
Hmm.
I think it's great that our team sees continuity, and uh, I think we believe in smaller incremental steps. You know what? There good days, they're bad days, they're days that have many ups and downs, but when you work with talented people, you sort of work for the long term. A lot of times in business, because of the way financing is in private equity or other strategies, it's get it big,
Yeah.
sell it, get out.
Yeah.
And, we're continuing a tradition now that dates back 86 years to Eli opening his first restaurant at Ogden and Kedzie. And, the other rule is don't screw it up. Hey, look, we've been through a lot. We've been through ups and downs. I mean, when we tell the entrepreneurial story, because a lot of times people go, God, I'm so smart and done all this. And I go, and my parents who worked in the business all the years, and there's nothing harder than operating a restaurant.
Yeah.
And what they did for me, and then, good name and contacts, and we built upon it. But hey, there are ups and downs, and we're lucky. We opened this facility in 1996. We had a competitor that opened a facility literally the day before 9/11, and they never recovered from that. Or what happened during COVID. So we take the long-term view. I think it's sometimes you think about, God, I've been doing this for a long time, but it's clearly a lot of fun. It's a great place to work with wonderful people. We have great suppliers, great customers.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think, look forward to supporting Alana and, our people, and just continuing to focus on building the business and don't screw around with the fundamentals, people, products, customers. That has to be the North Star. If companies have a habit of getting off the path, and then suddenly either they're not worrying about their people, they cheapen their products, and their issues with their customers is how do you get the highest price. So we believe, Eli had on his menus, it said, we'll serve good food at a profit if we can, at a loss if we must, but always good food. And it was signed Eli, Esther, and Mark. So, look, you want to make money, sure, isn't important, but there's a lot more to it. And if you're here for the long term, you're going to invest and you're going to do things differently than someone who, buys 3 cheesecake companies and is going to get the advantages of reducing overhead costs.
Absolutely. And I think that, I was very excited to know that there are a lot of Chicago, I don't know a lot, but there are plenty of Chicago brands that are private equity owned, that are these historic brands that have been acquired by private equity. So I do think that, Eli's definitely stands out in that way. And I know that Chicagoans are happy to hear that you've been in it for the long haul. You have this incredible tradition, and you'll continue to be in it, be in it, be here, be doing what you're doing, making amazing cheesecake and desserts. And so that's really exciting. One last question. Also one that we always ask at the end of every episode. When people come visit, when people come visit you here in Chicago, or people ask you for recommendations about the things that you must do in Chicago, what do you recommend? What are your top Chicago recommendations?
So I'd say, for one, I love Chicago history. As a docent, when I was a high school senior for the Chicago Architectural Foundation. So,
cool.
So see the architecture, take the Chicago River Cruise, and Chicago's First Lady, something people have to do. Go to Pullman, go to Graceland, go to Frank Lloyd Wright's Oak Park. I'm a Michigan Avenue guy. We actually live. So Eli's the place for steak was located where Lurie Children's Hospital is now at 215 East Chicago Avenue. We live 2 doors away. But, you go to the water tower, and I think, Michigan Avenue, you have the Mile, you have the lake close to the east at Chicago Avenue. and you walk around. I mean, it's phenomenal. So I'd say that, when people come, where should I stay? You stay in the neighborhood, and we have great restaurants. Our friend, another great history, Grant the Porters, Harry Carey's. We like Joe's in Chicago, Manny's, great deli. You got to go to really get that impact of the counter. Chicago, I think people are warm, they care, and, we have so much to offer from theater, from restaurants, from entertainment. And, in this past year when, there's been a lot of, Chicago gets beaten up a lot in the national press, and saying, hey, you know what, look, you see what can happen when people work together. And, we look at, Mayor Daley's, vision with Millennium Park. We look at the lakefronts, whatever, open, clear, and free. Hey, it's a pretty nice place. And I think as we watch people who've relocated the coast, housing's more affordable, you can get around. I mean, there are so many great neighborhoods in all parts of the city, for shopping or dining. So, you know what, it's a great place. And to be, Chicago's Cheesecake it's a big deal. And this year, we feel we've got a lot of recognition. And again, that's the thing. It's not what we did, for Bill Clinton or what we did for Barack Obama.
Yeah.
But we're going to do tomorrow. And I think that's really the important part. So, really appreciate your time, and thank you for coming and for, telling these stories of Chicagoans and what people do. And, hey, we'll look forward to people coming to Eli's. Our cafe is open Monday through Saturday. I'm usually here, so when you come, ask for me. Say Ashley sent you.
I love it. I mean, this is why we started this podcast, to tell these stories of people who are doing all these awesome things in Chicago. I love Chicago. The listeners love Chicago. So this was amazing. Marc, thank you so much for sharing your time, sharing the story of Eli's.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Notes from Chicago. This podcast is edited and produced by Tanisha Blakely. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to Notes from Chicago on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts.